Well, what a great example with the census is. The census provides a real snapshot of where we are as a country, who lives here, what languages people speak, what areas of the country you have more people who are limited English proficient. Often interpreters and translators and other language services professionals are called upon to justify the need for language services, for example. The census has that. The census has all kinds of really important information that people can use to justify, support their positions. As you know, one of my big areas and concerns is advocacy. Well, in advocating for language services, often people are asked, well, why do we need this? Putting aside what the law says, being able to pull out something from the census that says, oh, in Wayne County, Michigan, for example, we have XYZ limited English proficient people, and they speak these languages. That's pretty incontrovertible. And if you're looking to get started with or improve a language services program, the census is where it's at. To go to the second part of your question about the Biden administration, I did a webinar last week for some county attorneys in the Southwest. And one of the things, and I did actually a webinar yesterday for a city in Colorado about federal compliance issues. And what I told both of them is the Biden administration is changing things every day, literally every day. So just as they recently put out a pronouncement that they're reinstituting civil rights protections in healthcare for LGBTQ people, that's just one example, but there are a lot more. And sometimes, admittedly, their changes are, buried in larger documents. But I really encourage people very strongly, and I'll be talking about this, to follow what's happening, because there's a change from the last administration, which isn't unusual when presidents change, particularly if they come from different political parties. There is a lot happening. And that will be one of the themes of my conversation at the conference. I think for a lot of reasons. I speak three languages other than English. I was an international studies major in college. I had the thrill one year of taking each language back to back, which was pretty exciting and a real interesting experience for me. So I have seen in many ways, both personally and professionally, how important language is. And the language is the basis of how we communicate. If I speak a language that you don't understand, you're not going to know what I'm talking about. If I'm trying to get some important services, or if I'm in desperate straits from a healthcare perspective and the doctor doesn't understand me, that's a real problem. So as I said, I've seen it personally. I've seen it in my own use of language. I've seen it in professionally. And just as an aside, I will tell you that during my Justice Department career, I had the privilege of working with many Native American tribes, one of them being the Navajo Nation. And I learned to speak some Navajo, and my Navajo friends told me, and they remind me every time we see each other, that I'm the only person they've ever met who speaks Navajo with a Bronx accent. So I'm very proud of that. And just as an aside, it just occurred to me, one of the times that I was in the Navajo Nation for government business, we're having dinner, and a big bus of tourists from France came in. No one in the restaurant spoke French. None of the French tourists spoke English. They didn't speak Navajo. So I spoke to them, and they were just shocked to find someone in Chinle, Arizona at like 8 o'clock at night who could help them order dinner, could read the menu for them, knew how to say well done for a steak. They just were astounded. So that's a great example, even though it's not obviously a life-threatening situation, how language bridges all divides. Oh boy, there are so many stories, and I know we don't have hours and hours to talk about them, but there's one story that occurred to me. There was a local election official in the southwestern United States who was in charge of running elections in a county that had Native American tribes and a significant Spanish speaking population, and also a large LEP population. She was very resistant to our monitoring the county and then also going to talk to her about some compliance issues that we had. So I was talking to her in her office. I asked her if I could use her telephone. And at that time, we didn't have cell phones. We just had, the regular landline. So she said, no. And I said, excuse me, I can't use the phone. She said, no, you can't. And I said, this isn't really putting our meeting, in a good light, because there are all kinds of things that we need for you to do. And now you're telling a representative of the United States that I can't use your phone. She said, yeah, that's exactly what I'm telling you. So the conversation and the meeting kind of went off from there. At the end of the day, everything worked out pretty well. She got the message. She was also lost her reelection, and her successor was incredibly helpful in moving forward with very ambitious and compliant language services programs. So that's one story, and maybe some other time I can tell you about monitoring an election in a city in the Midwest that was controlled by organized crime. That was a story I told my son's elementary school class. They loved it. So next time we talk, remind me and we'll talk about that. Well, you're right. I mean, it is a challenging time. There's a lot going on, and there are many different stresses, and COVID has really taken a toll in a lot of ways. One of my true pleasures is music. I mean, I love music, and I have a very particular orientation to music. I like rock and roll, and I like rock and roll from the 60s. I like classic rock, British Invasion, rhythm and blues, soul, blues, everything. And I have a penchant for turning it up, making it loud, and making my presence known from a musical standpoint. So that's something I do on a regular basis, and music is very important to me. Well, I'm going to go back to what I said at the start. Advocacy is effective advocacy is a underlies everything. It underlies if you go to the grocery store and they overcharge you by 50 cents. It underlies everything. That there are things that occur that are more important, are important, lesser important, but unless you advocate for yourself and do it effectively, then you're not going to be able to get your point across, and you're not going to be able to achieve what it is that you want. And there are, whether it's workplace issues for interpreters and translators with a larger picture, language access generally, ensuring that um, laws requiring language assistance are obeyed, and the programs that are put in place are effective and robust. It all comes back to advocacy. And I will tell you, I think we've talked about this before. I mean, I'm originally from the Bronx, and I make no bones about that. I talk with my hands a lot. I'm very vocal. I tend to be very physical in how I do presentations. And my way of thinking is, wait a minute, what do you mean you don't want to do that? Let's talk about why you need to do that. And just like I told that election official in the Southwest, I really don't think this is something that you want to be doing. Let's look at this another way. But I have to stress, it has to be effective. That means no yelling, screaming, profanity, insulting, just effective advocacy. And I know that for me, it was a real blessing, and is a real blessing, to be an attorney and having spent a lot of time in the courtroom. Courtroom was a great teacher for me in many ways. And I often use what I've learned and what I've experienced in advocating positions to achieve the results that I want, even when it's making sure that the supermarket where I go to has the ice cream that I like. So it really hits all areas of life.